Hey everybody, it's Jochen Hyde, and I'm back with another tutorial from my tutorial series. And today we're going to be talking about Kido Butai and the strike on Pearl Harbor on turn one, particularly if you're playing a non-historical first turn. The reason I'm bringing this up is I just started another campaign, and a few other people have as well. And I noticed one person in particular launched a Pearl Harbor strike, and it was what I would classify as not good. He had good results, but the amount of aircraft he lost were outrageous. And when I questioned him about it, he said, I don't know. It's just what Kido Butai does on turn one. And I said, you did fix the air orders, right? And he more or less said, what are you talking about? So the purpose of this video is to show you guys how to optimize your turn one Kido Butai strike, not only on Pearl Harbor, but essentially anywhere that you want to send it, because the world is your oyster with a non-historical start. So the way, let's say that you just started your play by email campaign, you're starting your turn one setup. Kido Butai and its supporting vessels all start at Atarofu, and they will move wherever you tell them to move on turn one, with some caveats. If you want to know how to move ships around on a non-historical turn, special move task forces, I have another video for that. But we're talking about Pearl. So let's say you want to send them to Pearl, right? Um, that's fine. And this is where they default to if you don't do anything, right? So there's Kido Butai. And essentially, they are going to end up a few hexes north of Pearl. That's fine. Okay. We'll talk about positioning later. But what about the air orders? You got to fix that, because the way that they're set up default, assuming you change nothing, you're going to lose a lot of planes for nothing. Because they're set up as if you were flying a real Japanese historical attack on Pearl, where the Zeros went in and strafed the airfields and did all kinds of stuff. That's fine. But you're going to lose a lot of aircraft. So what I'm going to show you is what happens if you don't change your orders on turn one. So let's run this turn right now, assuming we do nothing else. And let's see what happens. And then we're going to tweak some stuff. And I'll show you how much better it can be. Let's check it out. Okay. So here we go. This is the stock attack on Pearl Harbor. And honestly, it's not too bad. A lot of zeros went up. All the Kates went up. And a lot of vowels did not go up. But you see here, these zero losses were very high. And it's actually probably going to be more than that, because some of these damaged aircraft are probably not going to make it back. So this is not optimized. The way this is set up, a lot of vowels are left behind, and they carry a lot more bombs than the zeros do. The zeros carry machine guns, cannons, and little 60-kilogram bombs. And the way this is set up, these zeros go in and start strafing and bombing the airfields on Pearl. And quite honestly, I'm not seeing the amount of aircraft destroyed that justifies using zeros for this. The valves can do the same thing and take less damage doing it. And you know, this will never change, because if you set this up correctly, your Kates will always go for the ships. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to optimize this so that you get all of your bombers and just a bare minimum amount of zeros or none to fly, so you don't risk these guys. Because in my opinion, the most important asset on Kido Butai early on are the fighters, because there's not a lot of them. You have a lot of bombers. You don't have a lot of fighters. So we're going to go through now and set this up a little bit differently so that you can get a better result and lose way less aircraft. And quite honestly, you'll see almost the same results as you see here, but with way less aircraft lost. All right, let's go through and set it up. Okay, let's start. So we're going to go over to Kido Butai and we're going to make some changes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on carrier aircraft here, and I'm going to sort it by clicking all types so they go away and clicking fighters. So right off the bat, anything that says airfield, I'm standing that down, because I don't want to risk my zeros strafing the airfield. They're too valuable to me. Okay. Next, these things that say sweep, don't need them, because if you're playing the typical play by email campaign, it's going to have December 7th surprise already set up. All right. So your sweeps aren't going to catch any fighters on training missions anyway. So why not protect these guys and keep their fatigue very low for turn 2 when you may need them more. Okay, so we're going to rest those. These guys that are set to escort, I'm going to leave them alone. I'm not touching them at all because with the spaghetti code of this game, it's very sensitive to misclicking this first turn strike. There's a finite amount of aircraft that can launch on turn 1, and if you start clicking the wrong buttons here, you could start taking away strike aircraft from your package. All right, dive bombers. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on one that says airfield. I'm going to put the search level down to 0, and I'm going to click set all dive bombers in this task force. So now all of them are going to the airfield, 100% of them, and none of them are in search. I'm going to leave that alone. Now I'm going to click on torpedo bombers, and I'm going to click on this top one, and I'm going to select, this is fine. I'm going to click set all torpedo bombers in this task force. So now they're all going to do a port attack, and none are going to go to the airfield, and they're all going to go together at the same altitude. All right. One thing you need to keep in mind is that typically torpedo bombers cannot use torpedoes on port strikes. There is an exception for turn 1 only, where some Kido Butai torpedo bomber squadrons will launch their torpedoes. However, just be aware, the majority of them will probably take bombs. So the bombs that they take are going to be 800 kilogram bombs and not 250s. The 250s aren't going to do anything to the battleships, but the 800 kilogram bombs, which are not depicted here, will. So I'll show you in the combat replay the ordnance that these bombers will take, but don't be shocked if you don't see a lot of torpedo hits. It's very RNG dependent. We'll talk about it, but here we go. We've got this strike properly configured. So now, if we did it correctly, all of these bombers are going to fly. 100% of them, and the Kates are going to go for the port, and the Vals are going to go for the airfield. The fighters will not go for the airfield, and our actual aircraft losses should be a lot lower. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Okay, here we go. Pearl Harbor strike's coming up. Aha! Awesome. All right, so here we go, guys. We have a full deck strike of Kido Butai aircraft. Every single bomber you got is in the air. And on top of that, you have 30 fighters on escort going in with them. Now, what's going to happen is the fighters are not going to go down and strafe and let the bombers hit the airfield, let the Kates hit the ships. And I'm going to fast forward and let's see what we get out of this. All right, here we go. So, again, every single bomber took off, and here's your losses. These are a little bit higher than I typically see, but remember, every time you run this, it'd be different because of the way Gary Grigsby dice rolls work and all that stuff. So I've seen as little as 2 aircraft loss. I've seen 12 aircraft loss, but I'm okay absorbing the losses for the Vals and the Kates because I have a lot of them on Kido Butai, right? What I don't have a lot of are fighters. We don't want to be wasting them on turn 1 strafing. And as you can see here, the amount of damage that you do to the airfield is very comparable to what the stock first turn strike is. Okay. And here we go. There's your strike. Fair amount of torpedo hits here. It doesn't look like anything's going to sink on this. And again, you can run this 10 different times, guys, and you'll get 10 different results. It's always going to be different. I would call this a less than stellar turn 1 strike. During testing with the play by email I just started, in testing I was getting up to 5 battleships sunk, and on actual turn I got nothing sunk. So it's gonna vary. So don't get caught up on this. But what we do want to get caught up is on the right aircraft hit the right stuff with reasonable losses and no fighter losses, which are very important. All right, something else I'm going to show you about with these torpedo bombers, right? You'll notice that these Kates took the bombs. These ones took torpedoes. These guys took torpedoes. Almost all but 2 of the torpedo bomber squadrons took torpedoes, and the rest took bombs. You have no control over that. It's up to Gary Grigsby and his friends and their little 1,000-sided dice, and the game will decide randomly which ones will take torpedoes, which one will take bombs, and you can only hope that you get more than one squadron taking torpedoes. Again, you cannot control it. However, what we did control were the losses that we took. So this is how you properly set up your first turn attack. If you're going to go for not only Pearl, but let's say you want to hit Manila, you want to hit Singapore, which I wouldn't do. You want to hit Sydney, you want to be really scummy and hit San Diego. You know, you're going to want to set up your bombers in a similar way like this. And one thing I need to remind you guys, test it, test it, test it. Run this 3 or 4 times and make sure everything works correctly before you send this off for your first turn. Guys, don't just click a bunch of stuff and think it's going to work the way you want. It probably won't. If you don't test it, you won't know that it's not right. Now you know what you need to be looking for. 135 vowels, 144 Kates, the zeros, whatever you need to send. Don't try to send more than 2 squadrons on escort, because they'll probably start messing up and taking bombers out of this thing. There's a finite amount of slots for everything to work correctly, and this is basically the max you're going to get. But test it first. Hopefully this helped you guys set up your first turn Kido Butai strike. Last thing we're going to talk about here is Kido Butai positioning, which isn't necessarily how you relate it to optimizing the aircraft, but optimizing the task force itself. So let's take a look at that real quick. Okay guys, we're back at Terofu now. Let's assume that we've set up our aircraft correctly. Let's talk about positioning for Kido Butai. So the default position is going to put you north of Pearl Harbor. And it's kind of close. So a couple things you want to keep in mind here is that what are your plans for turn 2 and beyond? And what is your threat tolerance level? Honestly, there's no real reason to get this close to Pearl on turn 1. Your aircraft have a max range of 6 or 7, depending on if it's the... Well, if you want the dive bombers and the Kates to go together, the max range is 6. So you could sit 6 hexes away from Pearl and strike it, and theoretically all the aircraft should get off the ground. Now, if they're damaged coming back, you may incur a little bit more ops losses if they have to go further, but I don't know if that's really a thing or not. I haven't tested it. So let's just say that that's not really a factor you need to be worried about. You need to start thinking about, what is your plan for turn 2? Is your plan to hit Pearl on turn 2 again? On turn 3 again? Or are you going to stay off of Hawaii for a week and just wreck the place? Or are you going to beat feet and get out of town? And if so, what direction is your retreat path? So you need to decide this on turn 1, because wherever you click this button here is where Kido Butai is going to go on turn 1. So it's going to go right there. Now, if I want to, let's say we have an intention to hit Midway and Wake on turn 1. I would probably want to position Kido Butai, for example, like this. I would probably want to put it, let's see here. I'd probably put it somewhere about there. Let's see. How far is that from Pearl? Oh, 7. Okay, so let's move it 1 closer. So let's say you're going to put it right here in this hex. That would help you move towards Midway and Wake Island quickly on turn 2. Let's say you have no intention of doing a turn 2 strike. Positioning Kido Butai here gets you that much closer to Midway and Wake, and dissuades the enemy carriers from trying to go to either one of these places if it knows that Kido Butai is here and is moving to the west. And they'll see that because whatever PBYs are left alive in Hawaii whatever is coming out of Midway, Johnston Island, are going to spot Kido Butai for some time. Remember, you can have between 19 or 20 hexes of spotting with a PBY5. So they're going to see you moving for quite a while. And that's actually not a bad thing if you're trying to keep the enemy carriers from bothering stuff at Midway and Wake, for example. If you landed there, you may want to pull troops off, and you don't want the enemy carriers going up there to mess up your ships right afterwards. So you're going to put Kido Butai over here so it can quickly move west to cover these, right? Let's say your intention is to hit the South Pacific, right? Like you're going to hit Pearl and you you want to go to South Pacific, right? I would position Kido Butai somewhere down here, right? Or somewhere even like right there. 6 hexes away, and it allows you to start moving immediately towards the South Pacific and get down to Palmyra, Canton, or go to Australia, whatever you want to do with it. This is a good position to be in to quickly move that way. So you need to think about this, guys, when you're setting up your Kido Butai strike. It's not just the bombers hitting the airfield. It's the position of the task force that helps you move on to follow on mission sets on turn 2. Okay. If you plan on just hovering around Hawaii for a week, which I don't recommend, and just start bombing the place until there's nothing left, you can do that. But you need to be very unpredictable so that if he tries to send out surface forces, he's constantly having to figure out which direction you're going to be in. For something like that, I may want to start off like on the east side, and then I move over to the west side, then move north, then move over here, then move south. Constantly changing your vector so he can't figure out what direction you're going to head in following turns if you're actually intending to hit Pearl more than once. So again, I don't mean to drone on about this, but positioning Task Force 1 on turn 1 will help you move forward with following moves on the following turns quicker and more efficiently. So keep that in mind. It's not just the aircraft, it's the Task Force too. Anyway, if you have any more questions about this stuff, please come over to Discord, talk to me there, post your comments in the video. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this stuff. I hope that helped you a little bit. Catch you on the next one.